There are lessons in life that arrive too late to be useful. By the time a man understands them, the damage is already done. He's already lost the respect, already given away the leverage, already been ignored, betrayed, replaced. And worse, he doesn't even realize it until long after the moment passed. This is how most men live, blind to power, deaf to strategy, trained to be agreeable, reasonable, and fair, in a world that rewards the cold, the calculating, the brutal. Machiavelli warned of this centuries ago, that the man who believes others will play fair is already at a disadvantage. And yet, even now, most men still believe that their good heart will protect them, that their intentions will be recognized, that their honesty will be enough. It won't. And by the time they realize this, their fate is sealed. Because the truth is, no one tells you when you're being dominated. No one tells you when you've crossed from strength into irrelevance. It happens quietly. A promotion you didn't get, a message that never came, a room where no one listens when you speak, a relationship where you're tolerated instead of wanted. It doesn't look like failure. It feels like confusion, like wondering why nothing ever works out. But to Machiavelli, it's obvious. The man who lacks power is invisible. The man who tries to be loved by all is soon respected by none. And the man who doesn't understand this will serve those who do. This video is not for comfort. It is not to inspire you. It is to wake you up, because the clock is already ticking, and there are truths you must face now, or pay the price for later. These are not tips. They are warnings. Laws of psychological combat that weak men break every day without realizing it. Each one of them has consequences, socially, professionally, romantically. And once the damage is done, there is no apology or explanation that can undo it. You can only endure it, unless you learn now, while there's still time to change. And here's what makes these lessons so brutal. They feel wrong at first, because they go against everything you've been told. You were taught to explain yourself, to forgive everyone, to wear your heart on your sleeve. But Machiavelli would laugh at such training. He would remind you that the world is not ruled by the honest, but by the strategic. That people do not follow the nicest man. They follow the strongest signal. That power is not about being right. It's about being unchallengeable. What follows are the 15 brutal truths weak men never learn until they've lost everything that mattered. Don't dismiss them. Don't flinch, because each one reveals a decision you're already making, whether you know it or not. And by the time you realize which ones you've broken, you'll understand why they stopped taking you seriously. Lesson 1. Being liked is not the same as being respected. Weak men chase likability. They avoid conflict, soften their tone, smile too much, nod too often. They think being agreeable earns approval, and it does, for a moment. But what they don't realize is that likability creates comfort, not influence. People may invite you, talk to you, even compliment you, but they will never follow you. Because in power dynamics, likability is cheap. It's expected. It doesn't provoke tension or signal authority. Machiavelli warned that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because cruelty is the goal, but because fear creates respect, and respect creates control. When you try too hard to be liked, you position yourself as equal, or worse, beneath them. Lesson 2. Oversharing is a silent confession. Modern men have been trained to be open, vulnerable, transparent. They've been told that expressing emotions, revealing their thoughts, and being real makes them trustworthy. But Machiavelli would laugh. He knew that every word you offer becomes a weapon, that when you share your insecurities, your hopes, your fears, you give others the blueprint to destroy you. He advised rulers to say little and reveal less, because in power games, the quiet man holds the advantage. The one who talks too much creates expectations he cannot meet. He shows his hand. He exposes his weaknesses, and the world, especially your enemies, will not hesitate to use them. Lesson 3. The need to explain yourself is a sign of low status. You think you're being reasonable. You think you're clearing up a misunderstanding. But when you explain yourself to someone who hasn't earned it, what you're really doing is begging for understanding. And that's a position of weakness. Machiavelli warned that the prince must never explain his actions unless it serves his rule. Justification is a subtle form of submission. It tells others that their opinion matters more than your intent, that you need their approval to validate your decisions. But powerful men do not explain. They state, they act, they let the consequences speak for themselves. Weak men try to win arguments, Strong men control the frame. What do these three truths have in common? They all stem from a single disease: the need to be liked, understood, and approved. This is the weakness most men never outgrow. They carry it into every room they enter, every relationship they build, every career move they make. And then they wonder why people stop taking them seriously. They think the world is unfair. But the world isn't unfair. It's just cold. And it respects cold men more than warm ones. Because warmth is comfortable. Coldness commands. The next three truths will strike even deeper, because they'll reveal the quiet traps men fall into when they think they're building stability, but are really just avoiding the battle altogether. Lesson 4. Comfort is a slow death. Most men chase comfort like it's a reward, a steady job, a quiet life, a peaceful routine. They think the absence of threat means they're succeeding, but Machiavelli would call it what it is: seduction by weakness. Comfort makes men predictable. It dulls their ambition. It teaches them to avoid risk, confrontation, and conflict. But power is never born in comfort. It is forged in discomfort, in the tension of strategy, in the weight of pressure, in the silence of restraint. The man who becomes too comfortable becomes soft, and in the eyes of the world, softness is not kindness. It is irrelevance. Lesson 5. Predictability makes you replaceable. The weak man thrives on habit. He eats the same, moves the same, talks the same, reacts the same. He thinks consistency makes him trustworthy. But in the psychology of power, predictability is suicide. Machiavelli understood that a ruler must never become boring, because boredom invites rebellion. When people know what you'll say, what you'll do, how you'll respond, you lose all strategic advantage. Mystery creates leverage. Uncertainty creates fear. When they don't know what you're thinking, they watch you more closely. When they think they figured you out, they stop watching altogether. And that's when you get blindsided. Lesson 6. Avoiding conflict creates silent enemies. You think you're being diplomatic. You let the insult slide. You don't correct the disrespect. You nod politely, hoping it goes away. But what you don't realize is that every time you avoid a necessary conflict, you create resentment, in them and in yourself. Machiavelli warned that men are quicker to forget the death of their father than the loss of their position, meaning people remember power dynamics. They remember who checked them and who didn't. And when you let others get away with subtle disrespect, you train them to do it again. You think you're keeping the peace, but all you're doing is building quiet enemies who know you won't fight back. These are the traps of stability, the false security of the modern man who wants to be left alone. But power never leaves you alone. It demands attention. It demands presence. It demands the ability to disturb the peace when necessary. Weak men believe that peace is the default state, that if they just avoid trouble, they'll be rewarded. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that fortune favors those who seize it. That comfort is only an illusion until someone stronger wants what you have. And then the only question is, are you ready to fight for it? Or are you hoping someone else will? The next section will dive into the emotional traps that destroy most men, not because they feel too much, but because they never learned when to stop. And by the time they do, it's already cost them everything. Lesson 7. Guilt is the easiest way to control a weak man. The world doesn't need to beat weak men. It just needs to make them feel guilty. Guilt is the leash that keeps them obedient. They apologize for things they didn't do. They backtrack when accused. They crumble under disapproval. Why? Because they think being misunderstood is the worst thing that can happen. But Machiavelli warned that rulers must learn to be indifferent to accusations if they are to survive. Guilt makes men soft. It makes them compromise their position, explain their decisions, and submit to false narratives. Strong men don't collapse under guilt. They weaponize it. They understand that being hated is sometimes the cost of being effective. Lesson 8. Love makes you vulnerable, especially when it's not returned. Love is not weakness, but unguarded love is. Weak men give everything up front. They pour their energy, time, and identity into people who haven't earned it. They believe that love should be unconditional. But Machiavelli taught that loyalty should be conditional, based on mutual interest, not fantasy. A ruler must know when to appear affectionate and when to retreat. The man who shows his full heart too soon invites manipulation. He becomes predictable. He becomes dependent. And in love, dependence is the first symptom of powerlessness. Lesson 9. Anger reveals more than it hides. Many men confuse anger with strength. They believe that raising their voice, making threats, or losing control shows dominance. But Machiavelli would see it differently. Anger is a confession. It reveals what you care about, what you fear losing, and where you're most sensitive. The truly powerful man doesn't explode. He studies. He waits. Because while you scream and rage, he's watching, measuring, calculating. And when you've said too much and shown your hand, he uses that information to crush you, not with emotion, but with precision. All three of these emotional traps, guilt, love, anger, are rooted in the same flaw: uncontrolled transparency. Weak men feel something and immediately express it. They think that being honest about their feelings gives them credibility. But in the real world, it gives others leverage. Power belongs to those who can feel deeply and reveal nothing. Because the man who cannot hide his emotional state cannot protect his position. He will be manipulated. He will be baited. He will be broken by those who show less than they feel. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to appear virtuous, while always acting according to necessity, because appearances are tools, and emotion, when used strategically, is powerful, but when revealed recklessly, it's fatal. In the next section, we'll expose how weak men fail to understand the true language of power, and why their words, beliefs, and intentions fall flat in rooms ruled by presence alone. Lesson 10. Power is a language, and most men can't speak it. Weak men think power is about shouting, showing off, or holding a title. They imagine it's something you wear or declare. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that true power is invisible to the untrained eye. It's not what's said, it's what's withheld. It's not the volume of your voice. It's the timing of your silence. Most men never learn this. They believe that if they make their point clearly, if they explain their case passionately, if they just talk long enough, they'll win. But they don't understand. Real power speaks through tension, through presence, through mystery. The most dominant man in the room is rarely the one talking. It's the one who makes others nervous without a word. Power is not about forcing outcomes. It's about positioning. It's about controlling perception. It's about being read as someone who might act. And that possibility alone bends the behavior of others. Weak men can't wield this. They crave clarity. They want to be understood. They demand fairness. But power isn't fair. It's quiet. It's strategic. It's psychological. And unless a man learns this early, he will forever be confused why the world ignores his strength, doubts his competence, or overlooks his presence. The answer is simple. He doesn't speak power. He mimics it. But the real players can tell the difference instantly. Lesson 11. Presence always beats performance. Weak men overcompensate. They overtalk, overpromise, overexplain. They try to win people with charm, humor, or excessive effort. But the powerful man doesn't perform. He just is. His presence is composed. His eyes are calm. His movements are minimal but intentional. He doesn't chase attention, which is why he gets it. Machiavelli warned that rulers should appear certain, even when they aren't, because people don't follow accuracy. They follow authority. The man who appears unmoved, detached, and silently confident will always be perceived as higher in status than the man who tries too hard to impress. Presence is not about personality. It's about posture, stillness, and timing. When you walk into a room, the way you carry yourself communicates more than your resume ever could. Weak men ignore this. They fidget, they ramble. They try to compensate with words what they lack in presence, but it never works. Because once someone senses that you're trying, the illusion is broken. Power is never given to the one who wants it most. It's given to the one who needs it least. The next truths will strike even deeper, because they reveal the fatal moves most men make under pressure. They explain, justify, or beg, when they should remain still, calculated, and cold. And in doing so, they lose everything they never realized was already theirs. Lesson 12. Defensiveness signals. Weakness before you say a word. The moment a man says, "That's not what I meant," or "You misunderstood me," or "I swear I didn't mean it like that," he's lost. Not because he was wrong, but because he revealed that he's shaken, that someone else's accusation has rattled his frame. Machiavelli warned that rulers must be immune to judgment, not because they are perfect, but because they understand that justification invites more attack. Defending yourself says, "I care what you think. I need to prove something to you." But the powerful man never does. He lets the silence speak. He lets others twist in the uncertainty. Because the moment you start explaining, you validate their accusation. You accept their frame, and that frame becomes your prison. Weak men explain themselves. Powerful men shift the pressure back. When questioned, they respond with stillness. When accused, they raise their chin. When insulted, they look through the attacker like he doesn't exist. That is not detachment. That is strategic cruelty. It makes others second-guess their own offense. It turns judgment into discomfort, and in time, it turns critics into submissive shadows. Lesson 13. Apologies are often more damaging than the offense. Modern men are trained to apologize for everything, for being too quiet, too blunt, too ambitious, too masculine. They think that being quick to say sorry makes them noble, but Machiavelli would tell you the opposite. He'd tell you that every apology lowers your rank, that when you say sorry without necessity, you concede power, and power, once given, is rarely returned. The apology that is not demanded, or that is offered too freely, tells others that your position is flexible, that your self-image depends on their forgiveness, and that makes you a servant, not a strategist. There's a time to apologize, but it is not when you're afraid of looking wrong. It's when you've already demonstrated power, and you choose to show mercy, not because you were pressured, but because you controlled the terms of the concession. Weak men never reach that level. They apologize in real time, in public, in reaction, and each time they do, they shrink in the eyes of those watching. These two errors, defensiveness and premature apology, are the death signals of masculine power. They tell the world, I am unsure of myself. I care deeply what you think. I need to be seen as good. And Machiavelli would laugh. He'd remind you that your enemies want you to seek their approval, that the moment you do, they own you. Because once they see your need, they know where to press. The next section will bring this full circle, the final two truths. And they don't just explain why weak men fail. They explain why they never recover. Because the last mistake they make is the one that locks in all the others. Lesson 14. Needing closure is just needing permission to let go. Weak men want resolution. They want clean endings, final words, mutual understanding. They'll wait weeks, months, even years for someone to explain why they were treated badly. They'll chase answers from people who've already moved on. They call it closure. Machiavelli would call it delusion, because power doesn't need permission to move forward. It doesn't wait to be understood. The desire for closure is the desire to feel righteous. But the truth is, the man who needs to be told why he lost, already lost. And he'll keep losing until he learns to walk away in silence. Real strength isn't in forcing understanding. It's in mastering detachment. You don't need a final conversation. You don't need to be heard. You need to stop needing anything from the people who hurt you. Because the moment they see that you're waiting, even quietly, they know you're still in their control. Weak men crave resolution. Strong men create it without words. They disappear, and that absence becomes louder than anything they could have said. Lesson 15. No one is coming to save you. This is the truth most men never want to face. They spend their lives waiting for someone to notice their value, waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for the right woman, the right boss, the right timing. They believe that effort alone will reward them, that patience guarantees success. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that fortune must be seized, not received. That waiting is just passive failure dressed up as strategy. No one is watching you grind in silence, hoping to pull you out of obscurity. The world rewards the man who imposes himself on it, not the one who waits for permission to matter. Weak men are shocked when life passes them by, when they're overlooked, when others, less deserving, move ahead. But the truth is brutal. The world is not fair, and it was never meant to be. Power doesn't reward the good. It rewards the bold, the cunning, the cold. And if you haven't yet realized that, you're already behind. These final lessons aren't meant to inspire. They're meant to warn, because there's a moment in every man's life when he sees it clearly, that the world won't change for him, that his softness won't be rewarded, that being nice wasn't protection, it was camouflage for weakness. And by the time he sees it, it's already too late to undo the damage. But for the rare few who are ready, the transformation begins now. Because the next section will not offer comfort, it will offer the cold blueprint Machiavelli understood best, not how to survive in a ruthless world, but how to dominate it. There is a silent moment in every man's life when he realizes the world does not care about his intentions, his effort, or his suffering. It's the moment he finally sees how invisible he's become. How many people smiled at him while plotting against him? How often his kindness was repaid with disrespect? And worst of all, how long he tolerated it, hoping things would fix themselves. Most men break in this moment. They get bitter. They blame the world. But a rare few become dangerous. because they finally stop looking for justice. They stop asking to be seen. They stop needing anything. And in that silence, something sharper begins to grow. Machiavelli warned that in a world ruled by appetite and fear, the man who survives is not the most moral, but the most adaptable, the one who knows when to abandon virtue for victory, the one who stops apologizing for what he wants, who no longer asks whether something is fair, only whether it's effective. And that man begins not with noise, but with subtraction. He cuts out the weakness, the over-explaining, the second chances, the blind loyalty, the belief that being good will one day be enough. Power requires isolation before it produces clarity. When you stop trying to be liked, you notice who respected you. When you stop defending yourself, you notice who stops challenging you. When you stop reacting, you see who was controlling you. And this shift, this withdrawal from performance, is what Machiavelli understood better than anyone. The ruler doesn't rise by convincing everyone. He rises by knowing when to disappear from the mob and reappear as the storm. The weak man reacts. The strong man watches. The weak man hopes. The strong man calculates. The weak man demands answers. The strong man creates outcomes. This is not philosophy. This is the machinery of power. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You realize how many times you gave your advantage away, not because someone beat you, but because you couldn't control yourself, your emotions, your guilt, your hunger for approval, and the world took from you, again and again, because you never learned how to say no without explanation. But now you know, and that's the difference. Because most men only realize the truth once they've lost their youth, their power, and their edge. They remember every moment they stayed silent when they should have walked away, every time they talked too much when they should have observed, every chance they gave that turned into regret. And by then, it's too late to rebuild. But if you're hearing this now, and you're still breathing, it's not too late. It's only too late if you do nothing. You don't need to fix your past. You only need to change your posture, withdraw your need, withhold your emotions, restructure your presence, and begin again, not as a man chasing validation, but as one who's done asking for anything. Machiavelli didn't warn you to make you afraid. He warned you so you'd stop waiting, because in the end, it's not the strong who win, it's the cold.